Yo, what's good? We back at it. It's your boy. We following through with another video. This is going to be on astrology behind the death of Nipsey Hussle. I'm following through now because you guys said that you wanted this video after we did the astrology behind the kidnapping video. And yeah, we're just going to follow through and see what would have transpired or what did transpire on the day that Nipsey Hussle transitioned. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is not always the most reliable source for information, but we can take some information from here, right? So we see that Nipsey Hussle was born in Los Angeles, California, which you see right here. And it says that he was born on August the 15th, 1985. It says that he died on March 31st, 2019, and he was 33 years old in Los Angeles, California. It says cause of death is murder, gunshot wounds. Now, when we get to what transpired, we're going to see indications of that and things that were, manifesting. So let's scroll down to death. It says on here, on March 31st, 2019, Hussle was shot at least 10 times in the parking lot of his store, Marathon Clothing, in South Central Los Angeles at 3:18 p.m. The perpetrator also kicked his head, or Hussle's head. Two others were wounded in the shooting. All three victims were transported to the hospital where Hussle was pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m. He was 33 years old. I'm gonna stop it there. So it says, according to this site, he actually got shot at 3:18, and it says he died at 3:55 p.m. So let's go to his chart. This is his chart right here, and we're gonna use those times when we get to the transits and other, forms of predictive astrology, right? Or looking back in time. So now, before we do that, I want us to pull up his birth chart. The reason being is because I want to talk about just some of his energies that he was natively born with. This is a snapshot of August 15th, 1985. The time I had for him was 8:39 p.m. He was born in Los Angeles, California. So I have him at a Pisces rising at 16 degrees. And one of the things I want to talk about is he has a stellium in Leo. Stellium is three or more planets. He has the sun, moon, Mercury, and Mars all in Leo in the sixth house. So Leo, we know, is the entertainer, which that's what he was. He was an entertainer. He was also a businessman, philanthropist, things of that nature. Right. It's in the sixth house. Sixth house is the house of work. So it's an emphasis on him basically wanting to be recognized or getting recognition, getting attention, which is all Leo, being seen, noticed for his work. Right. That was one of the things that he came here to basically do. Now, with a Pisces ascendant, the ascendant is kind of how you act. It also represents the physical body and you as well. So Pisces also rules over the entertainment industry, as well as other things like creativity, arts, spirituality, music, things of that nature, healing work. So to me, Pisces and Leo are two of the most creative signs in astrology. They both rule over the entertainment industry. Now, another thing I want to point out is that he has Taurus on his third house. Taurus is the sign of money, stability, comfort, right? So wherever Taurus is at in your chart, it can give indications just like the Venus sign, wherever that's at, and also what's going on in the second house, which is a Taurus house. This can give indications of ways you can make money. He had Taurus on his third house. Third house is the neighborhood, it's your relatives, your siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, right? So he could make money, Taurus, in his neighborhood. And we know that he had the Marathon clothing store, right? Also, he was someone who wherever Taurus is at in your chart is where again you're more comfortable, you're more secure and stable. So he was someone who was very comfortable in his neighborhood. He was very solid, which is Taurus. He was basically secure in this area, you know. So I just wanted to point that out. So now let's get to the transits. Okay. So now transits, these are two wheels right here. The transits are basically a map of the planets in real time, which would have been on March the 31st on this date, right? For his death or transition. And this is the planets moving in real time. And we're comparing it with the inner wheel, which is basically his birth chart. So of course we see the sun, moon, Mercury, Mars, which was that stellium in that sixth house. And when these outer planets in the outer wheel, the real-time planets on this date, were making an aspect to his natal chart, certain events or triggers can pop off. Things can pop off or manifest in your life depending on what's going on, whether it be for the negative or positive, you know? So one of the things when we're talking about death, we have to look at is what's known as the high legs or theta planets, and we have to look at the anaretic planets. The high legs would be what's known as the life bringers, the planets that bring life, right? So this would be the sun over here at 23 degrees in Leo, the moon at 19 degrees in Leo, and also the ascendant degree, because the ascendant degree talks about his physical body, and then the ascendant rulers, which are the planets that rule over the sign that's on the ascendant cusp. So Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter is the traditional ruler. Neptune is the more modern ruler. So these planets, these two planets, when aspects are made to it, can talk about what's going on to his physical body, for the negative or positive. So we need to pay attention to aspects and see what's going on there as well, right? One thing I want to say was you also have to pay attention to the anaretic planets. These are what's known as the takers of life. So this would be Mars and Saturn, the malefic planets. We also have the South Node, which has a malefic tendency when it's making certain aspects that are challenging or hard aspects. This can release things. This can let go. This can drain. So we're going to see indications of that when we look at the chart. So one of the main things that stood out to me on this day of March 31st, 2019, and I did put 355, even though it said he was shot at 318. I put 355 because this is supposedly when he died on this day. So now with this stellium in the sixth house is also dealing with the house of health besides work is health, right? Pay attention to an 11th house over here. We got Saturn, which is one of the anaretic planets. It restricts things, it limits. We got Pluto. Pluto can talk about control. It's the planet of death as well. And we have the South Node, which I told you has a malefic tendency. It drains, it releases, it lets go. And it's all making this green aspect. This is what's known as a quincunx, 150 degrees. And it's hitting his two high legs over here, the sun and the moon. So Pluto and the South Node at 23 degrees is hitting his sun over here at quincunx. Quincunx represents a difficulty or a challenge. That would be the key words for it. The sun represents vitality. So the planet of death is hitting his sun, which is his vitality. And we have the South Node over here too, which is letting go, draining, right? Releasing, weakening his sun, which is vitality. Sun can also be looked at as your soul, right? Soul kind of means sun or stands for sun. So this could be a letting go or release of the soul, the planet of death hitting his soul or his vitality. And also we have to take into consideration we have Saturn. So Saturn is kind of wild by degrees, but it's restricting his vitality, right? It's limiting his vitality. So it's a lot of things that's going on this day with the way that these planets over here in this 11th house. Now we also have the moon. The moon is also a life bringer as well. So we have Saturn hitting it, both at 19 degrees with the moon. To me, also whenever you have Saturn aspects that are malefic to the moon, and I don't know if I mentioned the hard aspects, excuse me, are the oppositions, the squares, and we could say the quincunx aspects, right? So these would be basically uh causing challenges, right, to the moon. But this is a depression aspect. Anytime you have the Saturn making a hard aspect to the moon, it represents depression. But we also have Pluto 4 degrees away, and the South Node also weakening, the moon. Moon could be like the flows of the water throughout the body or different fluids as well. It represents fluids in the body and emotions as well. Okay, so I wanted to point out what this 11th house over here represents. This house can represent in terms of when planets are transiting through, where the energy is actually coming from. So with these malefic planets, this can show up as, for instance, the 11th house can be your networks of people, that you associate with. It can be your friends. It could be people acting friendly towards you. It can be your community as well. And then whenever you see the planets there, they can tell you what's going on there, as well as the sound and the cusp can talk about who is possibly coming from. So if you notice in this 11th house,
we have the energy of Capricorn there, and Capricorn rules over the government, right? It rules over establishments. It rules over tradition, authority figures, bosses. So it could have been coming from these type of individuals or more mature or elderly people in terms of who was causing this restriction to him and wanted to block him, basically. So we see, for instance, with Pluto making a conjunction in that 11th house to Saturn, someone was working, which is Saturn, to control, which is Pluto, him, and it could have been someone who, again, was either in his network of friends, or it could have been a community of people, could have been a group of people, and then with Capricorn here, this to me, it kind of seems like the government, basically, the government or some establishment that was working to restrict him. They were causing a difficulty, which is that quincunx, to the sun, which is him shining basically, and getting and giving also attention to his work. It also was hitting the moon, so with that quincunx, so the moon is tied to his fifth house, where he has Cancer at. The moon rules over that, so it's tying in things with the fifth house. So it's telling me that this could have been they could have been trying to block him as well, and have control over him and restrict him, and it could have been pertaining to him taking care of things. And fifth house represents like his hobbies, his creative passions. It also represents the stage and entertainment. So they were trying to basically block him from, taking care of things, in these matters like entertainment, you know, creativity, things of that nature. Fifth house, excuse me, the sixth house was also the house of health. So to me, this was telling me things like, okay, well, they wanted to block him and cause some type of death to him, and it was giving you topics of, okay, well, this is pertaining to health as well and his work. So just keep that in mind.
Now, another thing, and I'm gonna pull up my notes because I also took some notes on the aspects that stood out to me. It's always going to be a multitude of planets that are weighing in on the different high legs. It's not going to be just one that would indicate death or things of that nature. So he also has the sun, the transiting sun right here can talk about vitality. It is in the first house, so this could be good for vitality, as this is the physical body, and the sun, is vitality. However, right, we do have the transiting sun at 10 degrees, and it's also making a quincunx to the natal south node. So this is also talking about a release, a letting go of vitality as well. So that's another aspect of vitality that's kind of being drained. So we have the transiting south node hitting his sun, letting go of vitality, releasing vitality. Then we have the transiting. It's a double theme right there, right? So these things are weakening or weighing in on his, we could say his high legs, basically, right? Now, also pay attention to Neptune. Neptune is the planet that brings confusion. It weakens things. It can dissolve or wash away things. It can make you lethargic, sleepy, deceit, things of these natures. So it's at 17 degrees, meaning that it was sitting basically right here, 1 degree away from or the ascended degree, which I told you is one of the high legs. So this is making him feel more lethargic, more tired. You know what I mean? Taking away some of his energy as well. It's conjunct Mercury, so we know that he was basically feeling kind of confused when it came to communication, expressing himself on this day of transition with this aspect. Mercury's communication. So, what are the things that can trigger, gunshot wounds, assaults? This would be the planet of Mars. Mars, the god of war. Now, I told you also have to pay attention to the ascendant ruling planets that represent the body. So we have Jupiter and Neptune. We don't really see too much going on with Jupiter, right? It's basically has the transiting sun making a sextile. But we see if we look at Neptune, his physical body, we see that he has Mars right here. Mars making a quincunx, difficulty or challenge to the physical body, right? So Mars can talk about accidents. It could talk about quarrels. It could talk about gunshots, assault, right? So this could have been some type of even weapons, knives, guns. So this can talk about a conflict that's causing a difficulty or a challenge to Neptune, which rules over the physical body over here. And since it's a Pisces ascendant, the key words for Pisces is sacrifice. So sacrificing himself. So in his neighborhood, this could be Mars also men too. Could have been a man that he has a difficulty or challenge, but it also could be a gunshot, right? When he was in his neighborhood and it's causing a challenge to the physical body. This is one of the indications as well. So it's a lot of things weighing in on these high legs, basically. We have a lethargic energy. We have what I would look at is the gunshots, right? 0 degrees Gemini to 1 degrees Capricorn, right? And since this is in the third house, this could be neighborhood basically as well too, right? Now they did say that this exchange that happened was over words, according to certain sources. I kind of think that that may be true. Reason being is because Mercury, transiting Mercury, was opposed at 16 degrees. His descendant. Descendant represents relationships. It could represent someone else. It could represent your open enemies. So this shows that he could have been confused in expressing himself, and he was having an obstacle, which is the opposition to another person, right? Someone he was in relation to on this day. Now I'm gonna add in. Let's see, secondary progression, solar arcs. So let's look at secondary progressions. These are also other predictive methods that you can work in tandem with the transits. So I know this looks kind of confusing, but let's compare the secondary progress chart to the natal chart. These are also symbolic time periods
where the sun moves about a degree a year, along with other personal planets.
So if we look back, the outer planets don't really move too much, but we see that in his progress chart, Saturn is also making a square at 23 degrees to his natal sun. That's also another indication right here of restriction to vitality. You know, that was one thing that stood out to me that I just wanted to show you guys. And then also we have okay, solar arcs. Give me 1 second, y'all. Okay. So in his solar arc chart, which the solar arc is the middle chart right here. And then we got transits on the outer, and then we got the natal. So we're comparing and contrasting these different charts. So we also see that Mars, which this can represent a male that he's in relation to, is opposing him. It's causing an obstacle to him in his physical body. Mars is at 16 degrees in Virgo, and it's also opposing his physical body. Mars, of course, is another indication of gunshot wounds, conflict, warfare, things of that nature, and it's in opposition to him, himself, his physical body. Now, I think this was a indication of conflict of words because also we see Mercury is 1 degree away. So Mars and Mercury are conjunct and is both opposing him, and also his Mercury is opposing this other Mercury. So this can talk about two people having a difference of words, basically, which we see conflict would have occurred. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Now, one thing I did not state is that whenever you are talking about death, you have to look at the eclipses, at least 3 to 4 eclipses before, and compare it with the natal chart. And if it's making a square quincunx opposition to the sun or the moon, this can talk about death if other planets are aligned. Basically, it's talk about death that can manifest within the year. If of course you have other things weighing in on the high legs. So what I have here is this chart right here. This talks about the eclipses, right? And I look back from 2018 to 2020. So the day that he died, of course, March 31st. When I looked on here, we're going to check 3 to 4 eclipses before and see if any of them are making any of those aspects we just talked about or conjunction to his sun or moon. So January 21st, It was an eclipse at 0 degrees in Leo, so that wouldn't affect him. We have January the 6th right here, 15 degrees in Capricorn. That doesn't really affect the sun or moon, or doesn't hit it. And we would use about probably like 1 to 3 degrees basically in terms of orbs. We do see on August 11th, so this would be the third eclipse before or three prior. Leo 18 degrees, right? There was a solar eclipse. So 18 degrees is basically hitting his moon over here. So this can talk about like, for the year to come or so. Possible death is just other weighing in factors. And I have seen that when looking at a lot of death charts, when I'm looking at the eclipses that's on the sun or the moon, or again, square opposition quincunx to it. I have seen that kind of shows up as a theme. This could have explained certain things that were going on. I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, feel free to leave questions below the video. And I'll keep it at that. Keep it very simple. All right, y'all. Peace.